Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, joined once more by Phil and bringing on Aaron for the first time talking Star Wars spoiler discussions. We are here today to talk about Andor Season 2, Episodes 1 to 3. They all have individual names. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
Doing pretty good. I must admit, when it came down to watching these episodes, as I did say earlier before we came on, I did watch them at 2 a.m. Being up early, I kind of regretted it the next day for the reasons of being tired, but not for the reasons of these were bad episodes or anything. This probably the most anticipated thing of the year for me, and did not disappoint. So looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, I'm not doing too bad. I'm looking again, like Phil said. I'm looking forward to getting into this because I'm I was a bit late to the party with the first season of Andor, but yeah, it's a good start, and I can't wait to get into it.
Definitely. I mean, it's a key. It's not the only reason we're Aaron. We do like your opinions. I want to hear from you, but we will get into the background to Andor Season 1. But for everybody watching at home, this is a spoiler discussion. So you're welcome to comment below your thoughts on Andor. Spoilers, of course, galore for the first 3 episodes. We'll be doing these spoiler live streams every week. We're not locking in a specific date and time like we've done on other spoiler discussions, mainly on the basis that 3 episodes a week. The UK getting it 2 a.m. on a Wednesday, the slap bang middle of the week. Recording on a Wednesday night is not ideal. It doesn't give people enough time to watch them. It doesn't give people enough time. Well, they can watch them, but it makes it very difficult to organise things. As Tony Gilroy has said in many interviews, he feels for podcasters. They're his official word. And I get it too. But there are some great podcasts out there who've seen all the episodes and will recommend you in case we get some guests coming on too. But yes, that's the spoiler warning. You can comment your spoilers for these episodes. If you like this video, if you think, oh, well, these guys aren't the one of Star Wars, there's obviously all of our Andor Season 1 videos. There's a lot of Star Wars stuff on the channel. Now, this is the last Star Wars series for this year. Ahsoka Season 2 is, well, that we'll be covering, I guess is the key word. Obviously, Visions comes out later this year, announced a celebration. Ahsoka Season 2, I'm thinking, will be out next year. I know it starts filming this week. There's obviously a lot happening in the space of Star Wars with the Mandalorian film. There's a lot of Star Wars things to come. So if you like that, do hit the subscribe button. And if you're into this, we've got loads of other TV shows happening at the moment, loads of new film releases to look forward to. If you want to find other videos, what else we're working on when we're announcing the streams, particularly if you like Andor, because again, we're having different times and dates each week. Get us on social medias. We put the dates and times of doing videos on there. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Blue Sky. I run all of them now. That reminds me of an Instagram post. I'll have to fix that later. But yes, spoiler discussions, talking Andor. I have a schedule. We're going to do these a little bit differently to how we've done previous videos. Normally, we talk about the episode in full. Obviously, we've got 3 episodes. We're not just going to rewind and zigzag through. So we have split up our schedule, and I'm guessing we'll do this in future videos for this series, only because I think it works out well. We'll be talking one story segment, which is about going to be the Empire, which is everything going on there. We've got one story segment, which is going to be the Rebellion, which basically means Mon Mothma. And then we'll have a third story segment to talk about, which is going to be Andor himself and see what Cassian has been up to alongside some of his allies and his key storylines. So I think that's the best way to do the story arcs that we're going to get. We know we're going to get 5 or 4 weeks of 3 episodes, one episode per year would be here forever. One story arc per year, 3 episodes a week. This week we started in 4 BBY, but before we start in 4 BBY, let's rewind the clock back to a year in Star Wars canon. 5 BBY, the events of Andor Season 1. Phil, very quickly, I want your thoughts summed up 2 years later.
I mean, Season 1 of Andor was, when it came out, I felt was almost revolutionary for Star Wars. It was a proper callback to more the political thriller style you had, obviously. You had your bit of action in it, but it was a slow burner. I do feel Season 1 has the right story in the wrong order. Certain bits like the heist should have been maybe later, but on the whole, absolutely adored the series. And when you ended up with that show, especially when we had the announcement that Season 2 was going to be this particular format, we didn't know how the episodes were going to drop, but we knew it was going to be 4 years condensed into one season and broken up into various sections. And to see where we were left off the end of Season 1, to see that kind of almost that spark happening. See Cassian start to kind of go from someone who didn't have much care for anyone else but himself, someone who was a bit aloof and a bit kind of, obviously taking deals, taking money from everyone, not really paying it back, being a bit of a scoundrel. So by the end of it, having a sense of worth. And of course, Luthen, again, fantastic Stellan Skarsgård's performance in that. And by the end of it, you had, 3 incredible speeches, Ferrex at the end being just one of the best set pieces in Star Wars and having so much detail crammed into it. Tony Gilroy doing a fantastic job with the writing. So to see where we end up now, there's a lot to talk about. But yes, that first season left everyone wanting more. And I think for me, it was one of the very first times I've seen, or one of the only times I've seen, where everybody I know who liked Star Wars liked it. There was no animosity. There was no people going, this is awful. This is the worst thing they ever made. In comparison to something like The Acolyte, which I personally adored, but other people have their issues with. This felt completely unanimous. Yes, smash hit.
Sorry, I'm on mute. Aaron, you're a little bit late to the party. I know you spoke about it with Tate a couple of months back, but your history of Andor Season 1, because this is really exciting. This is one of the key ones I went to on the first week of this season, but I'm not going to take the story from your mouth.
Yeah, so I desperately wanted to watch it when it first came out, but unfortunately stuff got in the way and I never got round to it. And then another year passed, and then another year passed. And I didn't actually get a chance to fully watch it in its entirety until about a month or two ago. And it's one of those things where I was kind of worried it wouldn't live up to the hype because so many people loved it. And by the time I'd finished, I was like, that is one of the best things I've seen in a while. Pretty much echoing what Phil said. It's got brilliant storytelling. All the performances are great. I think one of my favorite aspects of the show as a whole is the fact that everything, whether it be the characters or the locations, just everything feels lived in. And that's something you got quite a lot with in the original trilogy and even the sequel trilogy. And you didn't really get it with a lot of the other Star Wars stuff we were getting recently. But this felt like a lived-in world with lived-in characters. And you really got to care about each and every one, even if they had completely different storylines. And again, that was one thing that I loved about Season 1, that they seemed to be doing very heavily with the split format, is that it felt like there were mini stories leading up to a whole. So you had one little mini story, then you had another one, and then another one, but it all gradually built to that climax, which I do also agree is one of the best Star Wars things ever. It just, the way that all comes to a head at the end, I thought was brilliant. But yeah, I was very late to the party, but it did not disappoint. And I can see why everyone says it's the best Star Wars show. I love Ahsoka, I love Skeleton Crew, but I'm sorry, Andor is just like another level above that for me.
One quick question without making it Q&A. Obviously, we watched it weekly, and Phil, I can remember it. It was every week was going by where the conversation started evolving to. It went from a typical Star Wars conversations we would have to. This is really like good, and this isn't arrogant. Like this is Star Wars good. The conversations became this is like a TV drama up there with some of the best TV. Aaron, heading back to you, I just really quickly want to know, when you sat down and start watching this, the level of expectation, right, that people would have put on the series, right, from not having seen it for 2.5 years, there's a second season coming, everyone's the sun and back is saying Star Wars, this, Andor, that. Did that make it easier to watch the show, or did your expectations rise, which kind of makes it more, not accessible as a series, but even enhance how good it was that it made it tougher to break that? Because my experience, at least, was this was going to be a spin-off to the first spin-off, and we know what happens at the end. And within 3 to 8 episodes, that completely 180'd. And it was definitely the prison arc where I think for me, the conversation went to, we're past talking Star Wars now. I used to do a cringy when's Krennic coming back segment, which I deleted the files to. Yeah, I deleted the files. I wanted to bring them back because he's got a full role in this series, but it hit that level like Andor series doesn't deserve me desperate for this cameo, and then we get him in a featured role, so I win. But yeah, just your thoughts on that.
It was a weird one because, like, again, everyone had hyped it up so much. There was a part because when it initially came out, I think I was a bit like you when you said that, like, it's a spin-off of a spin-off. I don't know how well this is going to be, but when I heard that everyone was hyping it up as much as they were, there was a part of me just a little bit where I was like, I feel like I might not like this, which is hard to say because I like most Star Wars things. But I think for me, it was the third episode where Luthen and Andor escape Fenix, whatever, I can't remember the name. When they escape that immediately was like when the show kind of kicked up a notch. It was like, okay, I'm invested now. The first two episodes were good, but from that point onwards, the show just then continued to get better and better and better. And I was just sold from that point onwards. But yeah, it kind of hampered. It didn't really hamper my expectations, but at the same time, there was a bit in the back of my head going, "What if I'm the one person that doesn't like this?" Thankfully, that wasn't the case, but that was always in the back of my head.
That's very fair. I'm glad to get you on feeds as well. This is the sad thing about it being 4 episodes is that I don't talk behind the scenes too much on this channel. I think Mandalorian season 2 was one of the best seasons we ever covered in terms of coverage because we had a guest on every single week that like differs. Not saying I like having a set team. I love having a crew to talk the same stuff weekly, but it was this event thing, right? We got different Star Wars podcasts on. We got other people in their celebrations. That's what we wanted to do with season 2. But now it being 4 weeks makes it incredibly difficult to get guests, to get people on. So I'm glad to get you both on and shake it up a little bit. We obviously had Sam on the predictions. We will get Sam on probably on the finale. Again, it doesn't give us much window that it's 4 episodes and everyone's chances are gone. But let's really get into this now. So let's talk the 3 episodes. I know they eventually get arc names and whatnot. This one will probably set into 1 year later, and that's the name of the first episode. But I'm just going to call this 4 BBY, and for the sake of weekly discussions, it'll be 3 BBY, 2 BBY, 1 BBY, and then I'll be rewatching Rogue One, which is like 0.001 BBY. Let's start with the Empire, doing the best British accent we can as British people. So we might zigzag a little bit over the place. I'm going to talk about. I mentioned the Big K already, not the KKK. No, that's a different film. I fully recommend everyone watching Sinners. Phenomenal film. Talking director Krennic, I needed to get the Sinners plug in there. It's fantastic, and I'll say this actually: Revenge of the Sith comes out this weekend. It is not playing in IMAX because of Sinners. 2 weeks ago, I was absolutely raging at that. I've seen Sinners. I'm delighted at that because it was shot on 70mm IMAX. Give Sinners the IMAX screens. But the 1K, director Krennic, awesome Krennic. Ben Mendelsohn returns to the role of Star Wars, comes back. We begged for him. I begged for him probably in season 1. And very early on in season 2 production did they say Krennic will be in it. And I kind of want to say this. I don't read set reports. I don't like that sort of stuff anymore. I did as a 15, 16-year-old. Sometimes characters are put in Star Wars for cameos because they work as fan service. And I have no problem with fan service. Fan service can be done well, it can be done bad, but there is no issue with it to an extent. What Tony Gilroy has done in season 1 with his Rogue One rewrites, we can probably add now, the concept of cameo isn't there. The concept is this is a character that needs to be here for this purpose of the story. And Krennic was always that question mark for me. When we saw Krennic in the trailers, I was like, are we going to see him before the last 3 or 6 episodes? Like, is he going to have much of a presence? Because this guy's busy working on the Death Star. Is he going to have time for this rebel cell? I was so pleasantly surprised that episode 1 wants to put that to bed almost immediately, setting up the big storyline for probably the first 3 story arcs. And forgive me if this classifies as a spoiler, but this has been discussed at very much length as part of Star Wars Legends, has been mentioned by Tony Gilroy. The Gorman Massacre is going to be one of the biggest points of season 2. Context of the word massacre, we don't know that yet. That's obviously what the show is going to do differently to Legends. It's going to explore on screen for the first time and give definitive meaning to the Gorman Massacre. to have the Empire setting up the meeting of meetings off the record, off the books, no droids, no leadership. You're in here because you're named in here. Setting up the Gorman sort of Disneyland tourist video, and then we get the crux for the season. Because if I sort of spur the conversation again, one of my concerns for season 2 has been, will it work fluently as a season of 12 episodes? I know we're going to get 3 episodes a week. I know we're going to get 1 story arc a week. But are we going to get all 4 story arcs? Where I kind of sit with this is by bringing in the Gorma stuff so early on, it is now being absolutely locked into us throughout this production that Gorma leading up to the massacre is going to be a key part of these early story arcs. And I like that in season 2, I'm already at ease knowing that we are building up to something. Yes, it will happen in 2 to 3 years' time, but having this like Nazi-esque mountains of Switzerland type meeting with the hierarchy, like the Eagle's Nests, setting the plan in motion. Like, basically, we need this material. We need this material for an energy exercise, which I love. The Death Star, obviously, the Empire's not bragging, saying, "Hey, we're designing this terrible monstrosity." It's the energy project that the Palpatine's been working on. But we've got 3 years to build this. I kind of want both your thoughts on the concept of the meeting, but bringing Gorma in episode 1 with Krennic, setting him up, I would say, as the villain of the season.
Yeah. I didn't really know much. Again, this is probably potential spoiler then, but I didn't know much about.
No, it's fine because this brings the dynamic we want. Is that I didn't know much about Gorma till a month ago. I still know not much because not much is out there to know.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know much about it until I saw like a report saying that it was going to be a thing in season 2, and then I kind of looked into it and was like, oh Christ, they're gonna go there. Not known much about the thing in Legends, it does make me intrigued to see how it's going to play out, and how quickly or slowly they're going to get to that point. They could address it or do it in the next set of 3, or they could wait until like near the end. I don't think it will be at the very end, but it does. As soon as it was mentioned in the meeting, and the fact that is the show's reasoning for putting Gorman in the running, does have me intrigued, and it's one of those things where like it's that whole aspect is teased just enough in the first 3 episodes to raise that intrigue there, because it's kind of addressed in the first episode and then kind of put to side to focus on the Cassian stuff and the rebellion stuff a bit more. So I'm intrigued in that sense, and it is nice to see Krennic again. And I feel like he's going to just keep popping up every once in a while. He probably, as a whole, like you said, probably will be the main villain of the series. But I feel like in terms of his, like presence, I feel like he's going to just keep popping up here and there to set something in motion that will then just have a domino effect for like the next few episodes. Like with this, like nothing's happened with Gorma yet, but we know that's going to be a much bigger thing. And I feel like every 3 episodes, he's going to come in, set something crucial up, that will then happen, and then it will kind of be a rinse and repeat until we get to whatever the cliffhanger will be at the end that will lead into Rogue One. That's kind of what I'm thinking, but it does set up a lot of intrigue, and I'm excited to see how they approach this, considering we know what the end result of the Gorman stuff is. I'm intrigued to kind of see how they approach it and how they weave it into everything that they've currently got set up, and whether the other storylines will be a part of that or whether they will still stay separate.
Yeah. So, going to piggyback off slightly off what you said, George, in terms of the cameo effect. Now,
Oh, Phil, your sound's gone. We've lost Phil's audio, but I don't know if he knows we've lost his audio. I don't know. We've lost Phil. So he's currently on an iPad/phone, so that's why we're zigging in and out. I'm going to give him a couple more seconds. Let's see if this one works this time. I believe we have a Phil back. Hello?
Hope so.
There we go. We've got you.
Sorry, I had technical issues. So to be back off what you said about the cameo part, obviously in season 3 of Bad Batch, we did have a cameo of Krennic when they had all the people talking about those different projects, including Project Stardust, including what's obviously going to occur with the Death Star plus Project Necromancer and everything else. So we've had him pop up before, as Aaron says, well, in that kind of that presence role. And then we get into Andor season 2 itself. The Gorman atrocity, I don't know a huge amount for Legends, but it has been also mentioned in canon before. It was mentioned in Rebels. We had Mon Mothma's speech, which is something that we will probably get. I reckon that'll be in not season 3, sorry, in either episode week 3 or week 4. There we go.
I think the same. I think week 3, that's what I was going to lead into too.
Yeah.
It's mentioned in season 1. So I rewatched season 1 a few weeks back. And that's when they closed the Gorman shipping. They said when Mon Mothma was arguing with her husband, she's sort of there like, well, they've just turned off the Gorman shippings and you're inviting them around for dinner. I was like, oh, like there is not long-term storytelling, but this isn't just a one-season thing now. This is something they've actually built up to a year before. Sorry to sort of jump off, but I thought that was a great point to bring up too.
No, I appreciate it because it is, as I said, it's that wonderful story group point of it's kind of tying things together in such a way that Star Wars does so well, especially with Pablo Hidalgo at the helm going, oh, he put this bit and this bit and this bit together, you get the bigger picture. But Krennic himself, now yes, we did do the whole Krennic watch for season 1. However, a character with that much importance, especially when you get to Rogue One. Now, all the interviews we saw at Celebration, especially, they were saying, Tony Gilroy was saying, this will change your thoughts on Rogue One. It will change your thoughts, obviously, on episode 4, but I'm wondering if Krennic's direction, by the time he...
Oh, we've lost Phil. Phil, we've lost your audio again. So, if he's talking about our thoughts changing on Rogue One as it goes in, I am going to sit there and basically echo that when you rewatch Star Wars Episode 4 now, you get the opening crawl, and it basically says, Episode 4 opening crawl, the Rebels have their first victory. We now know that sentence is all of Rogue One. Episode 4's impact for me changes by knowing Rogue One. For me, Andor's going to completely 180. Well, I hope it completely 180s Rogue One. I love Rogue One, but I want to be able to go into Rogue One now. I didn't just watch 2 hours of tally that built me up to this meeting this character and these events. I want this 24 episode series to be like, whoa, this is the end game. This is the finale of Andor. Is Rogue One? Sorry, Phil, you're back. We got you back audio wise.
I believe so. I might have to switch to the computer, but you won't have video if I do.
No problem. We'll take your audio if we need it. But sorry, your Rogue One point.
So Tony Gilroy was saying throughout the interviews, this will change your thoughts on Rogue One, and Krennic is one of those linchpins to that. I also wonder if we're going to see potentially talk about the Empire, Galen Erso come into it. You might see Iriadu. I mean, we even saw Sinar at the beginning, so they're tying all these little bits and pieces together. But the Gorman atrocity was something that has all these little story points put together. And by the time you get to Rogue One, Cassian will be Cassian. You'll have a greater understanding of this character, and it will go from originally the thoughts of, well, why did they take this random person from Rogue One and add a story in for them? There's so much better they could pick. To now we've got a backstory. Now we've got an understanding and bringing more of Mon Mothma into it. Genevieve O'Reilly obviously making that character her own and embellishing it to the cows come home. But Krennic has allowed it to become this, from almost a joke to a proper serious villain. And that meeting, as you said, they're going, right, here's plan A, here's plan B, here's plan C. Now, plan C, we're going to have to wipe them all out. Now, I'm not saying we're planning for that directly, but let's just kind of make sure that one is accounted for. And to see the mindset start to shift, to see Dedra Mira, a character we'll probably get into talk about a lot as we go into this discussion, to see her reaction, to see even the small doubts creep in here and there, it's beautiful. So you have Ben Mendelsohn coming up to her at one point as Krennic and having that conversation. You can see on his face the whole, look, I've picked you, I've handpicked you, don't let me down. And it's just wonderful to see. So yeah, going off that whole cameo thing, he's gone from a character who, yes, we did want to see because we enjoyed it, to, hang on a second, he's going to become much more important than you think. And by the time you get to the end of Rogue One, where Tarkin takes over the Death Star, that impact will become so much greater because you know what he would have put in to get there. So that's why I think it's going to be that bit more impactful. Sorry about the technical difficulties. I'll try and move on. So you won't have my video, but you will have better audio.
That's fine. I want to talk about the credit thing you mentioned too, because this was a fun with me. We're going to talk about the Nazis a lot in the coming weeks. That's like a wild thing I never thought I'd say on the channel. Obviously, this series is dealing with fascism in the year of 2025. This film was written in 2024. Sorry, this was shot in 2023, written in 2023. So having today's policies from January the 6th this year that's been coming in, if we can get into that, I won't get into it too much, but Andor's probably one of the first hard-hitting shows since changes, not just in one country, in many country elections over the last 2-3 years. And there was something quite chilling about not the mountain setting. It was, these fascist leaders, they're having a tea break and they're going to best discuss how to wipe out the Gormans whilst they're having their tea, they're snacking on their food. Tony Gilroy has done this in the first season with Coruscant, and it's great to get more of the Empire perspective, because some of my favorite scenes and sequences in that first season were the ISB meetings, and that was just seeing the bad guys at work, and I loved that. But now it's moving into that next phase of how are these dictators planning on overthrowing, like, essentially a population, 800,000 people they want to get rid of out of that spot to mine it, knowing that the planet could get wiped out because they need this material for the Empire's energy project. I think as far as the sequence goes, that's fantastic, but Krennic turning it into a job interview, that he has only brought them in to basically think who's going to have the best perspective on doing this. And you kind of even get the really funny, I know it's not intentional comedy, but those two guys like, do you want to know how people didn't like this? That's because that's what we did in our strategy. And you get this great momentum moment where he just sort of smiles like, yeah, that's enough now. Basically, like, shut the fuck up. And I thought it was a really great sequence that, you know, when Star Wars is obviously for films and we get sequences in Star Wars films with the villains, but you don't get not this level of quality in the writing, but you don't get time on the big screen to spend it. You think back to the original trilogy, how many scenes do we actually have of the big bad guy sat around the table? One in A New Hope. And that's just for Darth Vader to choke someone and really, you know, bring that into things. But now we're getting like 10-minute scenes in singular episodes where it is those meetings. I'm down. Like, the writing's so good on it. The performances, the people involved. I absolutely love Anton Lesser, who is a British like legend of theatre. He has not had the big screen jump. He's again a thespian. I think he's on the ROC at the moment. His role in that first season coming into this, his relationship with Dedra Miro, I really enjoy it. Their chemistry with one another as evil fascist works. You know, he tells her, take this job, stop being obsessed with Axis, which is obviously the Empire's code name for Luthen until they know it's Luthen. Stop being obsessed with him. This is a gift. That's right. You're being told it's a gift, and it's essentially getting 800,000 people out of their homes. So it's such a chilling way to return to the show. Now, I know we're doing the Empire perspective first, but I just thought it makes it a bit funner because we like getting this bad guys. We've got Carl in the comments who says it's lovely to see you again, Phil, as is always. I mean, do you guys have anything more to say on that room? Because I've only really, if I'm honest, got one of the big scenes to talk about with the Empire before we move on to the next subplot.
To be honest, I think we've kind of, this is the thing, we're only 3 episodes in and we've only really been given that one singular scene of them at the table, and then the rest of the 2 episodes is focused more on Mon Mothma and Cassian and all that stuff. So it's hard to tell at this stage, but it does, I think, pretty much echoing exactly what you've said. One of the best things about Andor is you're kind of getting that look into the behind the scenes thing of all of the stuff going on, especially where the Empire is concerned, that we've never really had before unless you count stuff in like the animated shows like Clone Wars and Bad Batch and Rebels and stuff like that. But it's just fascinating because none of the live action shows anyway have really delved into that. Ahsoka was its own story. Obi-Wan was its own story. This is slightly different because it's allowing us to get that kind of perspective that we've never really had before. Not to say that we kind of care about characters like Dedra and Sirill, but it does also kind of give us a thing of like, oh, that does give us a kind of perspective behind that, rather than just seeing these people that we don't really know talking in a room. It's like, we already know. I know what I mean when I say that. I'm probably butchering my words.
No, I know what you mean.
But like, it gives us a perspective into that side that we've never really had before. And I think that's one thing that, like you said, we kind of need to give Andor credit for, because we don't really get that in the other live action shows. And it's just fascinating the more we see of it. I loved it in the first season, and I can't wait to see more of it here.
Yeah, I mean, you have as I said, that perspective. It's also the whole humanizing the dehumanizing. That's the best way I can describe that scene. It is humanizing the dehumanizing. It's looking at the Empire through a glass, but seeing the self-justification, seeing inflected on each of their faces, the whole, I understand where this conversation is going. I understand that we're talking about, as I said, that plan A. However, I understand we're really talking about that plan C. The Empire doesn't really care what happens. They just care they get the results. And you can see each of them. Dedra more so, obviously, because she has that interaction with Krennic. But you can see played across each of their faces, including throughout the meeting, you see various people looking at others, judging reactions, looking at the whole, okay, we're really doing this scenario. So it's fantastic to see that very subtle perspective, that very subtle view of, okay, this is what we're doing. Everyone here is here for the same reason. How can I justify it to myself? So the unspoken words in the scene were almost as important as the spoken words. So yeah, nothing more to add, but fantastic.
Phil, you've better explained what I was trying to get across than I did in a nutshell. So you've pretty much just done my job for me there.
Sorry.
That's all right. I butchered it, and then you just went in and was like, "Yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to get at," and I just ruined it.
We're going to stick with the Empire for a little bit longer, but we're going to jump forward to which it's a blur now. Episode 3, I think. Phil, I remember you being worried. If memory serves me correct, you did not like the idea of Dedra and Sirill being a thing coming into season 1. Enter season 2, and we officially have them as a couple. Again, going into that weird, I don't want to talk modern things. This is actually very 1940s now. Spending time with the fascist couple. It reminds me of all those films you'd watch. There's like a Christian Bale, Nazi youth film when I was younger. Boy in the Striped Pajamas is like a go-to people will talk about. But spending like a film from last year. It's so wild. I'm doing Nazi films now, but incredible sequence, incredible in a chilling way, yet strange but rewarding way of the meal. Dedra Mira meeting her mother-in-law for the first time, played. Oh my god, I've forgotten the actress's name. Legend of again, another theatre legend in the Star Wars Andor series. So Mrs. Fig in Harry Potter. That's so annoying. I've forgotten her name. That's very embarrassing. The mother being decimated by the daughter-in-law. I absolutely loved it. She has bullied that boy for 1 season straight, talking down to him at every opportunity. The ultimate sort of mummy boy definition that he hasn't got it in him to have the strength to leave. And he's finally found himself a woman, that's right, high up in the ISB, now planning on getting rid of 800,000 people. And she immediately, at the moment the coast is clear, threatens the mother. You can see him twice a month. Oh, and if you want to hype up the uncle, I've read his ISB file, so that doesn't want to come out to public light, does it? I love the sequence. I'm really curious as to what's going to happen to the pair of these characters, i.e. Sirill and Dedra, because the way I view the Andor cast is if you're not Cassian Andor or Mon Mothma or someone we saw in Rogue One, my odds are very firmly high on you dying at some point this season. and particularly the Empire characters. I think Dedra and Sirill would be the two. Obviously, we've seen them in other trailers, in action set pieces. But what are both your thoughts on them becoming this couple at the end of season 1? Because on rewatching that first series, I'm actually okay with it, you know. Like, but it's very strange. But it would be the like two completely awkward people getting together. But it works. And also, it's lovely to see Coruscant again, like people's homes, and like it felt like Attack of the Clones again in a complimentary way.
Yeah, so when when I was watching season 1 a few months ago, and that sort of thing was being set up in, I think it's the last couple of episodes,
Yeah.
I didn't really think much of it from like, oh, they're going to become a couple. I kind of thought of it more as like, he's got her back and he's got a thing for her, but it's kind of not going to go any further than that. And I had a feeling that this season was going to be more of a case of she's doing her own thing and is thriving in her job, and he's just kind of still in that position where he was at the end of the season. But now to see them as an actual couple, I think, like you said, George, it's weird at first. Like, I think when they're both in that same apartment together, I was a bit like, oh, we're doing this, okay. But then very quickly, it kind of just fitted into place for some reason. It's a hard one to talk about because I didn't think they were going to go that direction, and they've gone that direction. But yeah, it weirdly works when it really should, when it really shouldn't. And I think it is their chemistry, but also, I know what I mean when I say this, their chemistry, but lack of chemistry, because they're such an odd couple, makes it work. She's very, you know, how she is. He's very you know, there's a certain thing to them where it's like they shouldn't work, but they do. And I think that moment where he leaves the room and she just absolutely decimates Sirill's mum was like the moment where I was like, okay, I can see this working from that perspective. And yeah, it shouldn't work, but they've made it work, and it surprised me for sure.
They say you marry someone like your mother, and that is kind of that's the way you can kind of see it in this, because Sirill was very much underfoot at home. His mum very, it's downtrodden. It's very demeaning. It's very just, they're playing on some stereotypes and playing on the whole, you are a disappointment. I have given you everything when I've really given you nothing point of view. And yes, fast forward, yes, now we see them together. As you say, it shouldn't work, but it kind of does, and it kind of does in a way I didn't expect it to, because when you very first see them together, they don't look at home together. They don't look. It doesn't have that feeling of a loving home. It's very clean, very clinical, very them. It's very Empire. It's very just only the necessities are needed, even when he comes back with the shopping. And I love the scene where it's just the whole, oh, you're back early. She's coming tomorrow. Should I tell you you're still away? And Dedra basically shuts up and goes, no, let's just rip the band-aid off. Let's meet the mother-in-law. Let's get this over and done with. And you can see him throughout the meal getting like more and more dejected. And unexpectedly, she just stands up for him, because he buggers off to go and have a little cry in the corner. And she goes, right, he's gone. So you're going to shut up and listen to exactly what I say. I'm going to give you a deal. I will look after him, but you'll do this on my terms. And by the end of it, Sirill walks back and they're absolutely loving each other. It's great. So it's weird. But again, it's that slice of life. It's looking at the Empire from a different point of view. It's the actual everyday life, something that we've wanted to see for a long time, something that we talk about in some of the games and some of the books and stuff. You don't get that perspective. You just get the whole, oh no, they don't like the Empire anymore, they've gone to join the other side. This is different, and I really like it. Sorry, excuse the buzzing noise.
No, that's fine. I like the home life too, and there's actually a great piece of music in there. I know the score is now, and I don't know if you guys knew this, but the Nicholas Britell has not returned now to do season 2, so This has only been announced in the last week or so. Nicholas Patel has had some personal stuff go on with the family, so he has not been doing the season 2 score. The person that's come in is Brandon Roberts. So I believe he won an Emmy working on Free Solo. I'm not familiar with his work as a composer. Obviously, for whatever's happened to Nicholas Patel, I wish him and his family well. He's a tremendous composer. His work on season 1, let alone Succession, and many other things he's done. He's an unbelievable composer. There was really eerie music when they're like chopping the food. It's like, obviously it's not the Empire theme, but it's like this villainous theme, but it's 60s nuclear family type thing going on, and the juxtapositioning works really well. And as you said, Phil, it's a different scene. We've wanted to see this, but it's never been just. You can't do this in season 1, but you can do this in season 2. It's like you've hit the justification, and I think a big thing for these guys is the episode is 1 year later. So that you can imply, it doesn't matter they've been together 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. The 1 year passing is shown in this moment more so than the other story arcs, I want to say. Not the Mon Mothma one, but yeah, it's a really cool thing. I'm really intrigued to see what's going to happen with the pair of them. And I do think looking ahead, the one thing to keep your eyes on is Dedra did not tell him about the Gorman stuff. So obviously, well, correctly, she's put her, I say correctly like it's me. You don't want to be like lying to Krennic and saying I won't tell anyone, and then you tell your boyfriend. So I'm very intrigued because she did not like the Gorman idea. And I was expecting some, not cop-out, but I was expecting like, my boyfriend's family's from Gorm or something like that, where, you know, is there a personal angle? But then we get her personal life. And it's like, her and Sirill both grew up around their mother's love. One of them had their mother with her, the other one an Imperial compound, where she was not brought to her. It explains why she's the way she is. She doesn't have that emotional connection. So to find it in Sirill, it works for the pair of them as a couple. Good luck to them both, I say. Let's talk story act 2.
Hang on a second. Before you answer that is the one thing that did kind of I don't like, was that when she mentioned, I was brought up an Imperial compound, the maths does not add up for that, because this is what, 4 BBY, so 16
15 years after 3.
Yeah, so she would be, what, 18? The maths doesn't add up.
Yeah, that's a good. I guess you could probably say, I personally would think more like she was probably 10, 15, but mid-20s is even a bit of a push. I think Denise goes in her like mid-30s to late 30s, but maybe the implication is the old regime. But good spot, because I didn't get that. This is what we've got you on as well. You'll be able to correct us. By the way, Gordon Massacre, I'm not going to say it on the stream for the sake of people at home, but I do know the official Legends canon, it is like, when I say there's nothing on it, there are lines on it. That's it. It is not comics. It is not novels. It's not stories. It is like 3-sentence descriptions, which kind of gives Tony Gurry the playground of playgrounds. I believe it originated in a Star Wars board game in the 1990s, if anyone wants some cool behind-the-scenes fun facts. But yes, let's talk the rebellion, shall we? I almost did a terrible line, but I realized we're not talking Rogue One, we're talking Andor. We're just going to call this the Rebellion arc, the Mon Mothma story arc for this week, shall we? We'll do Cassian and his at the end. 1 year on, Mon Mothma's daughter is about to get married. And Phil, you can please correct me because I don't know. I think Sam brought this up in our predictions video. Sam said he wanted to go to Chandrilla. And we have. Is this the first time Chandrilla's been on, certainly live action? Was it in Rebels or has it been in animation at all? Oh. I don't know if you can't hear me or if he's
I'm thinking.
You're thinking. Okay, that's a great question. I'm so glad I asked you now. Because I loved it. I mean, 3-episode arc, something a bit different. Genevieve O'Reilly, I love as Mon Mothma. I keep forgetting she turned up in Ahsoka. She gave an interview about that, and she was kind of like, yeah, they asked me. I just said, yeah. I guess it's weird doing, like, 1 minute you're doing pre-Empire Mon Mothma, and now you're doing post-Empire Mon Mothma and adjacent shows. This story arc, oh my. I've come into Andor Season 2 with one very terrifying prospect. Mon Mothma's going to get the terrible haircut at some point. And Genevieve O'Reilly, I believe the term is slay, people use today, will continue to do so in her dresses with her unbelievable hairstyles. The dreaded pixie cut will come eventually. We know basically, my prediction, she's going to have the most terrible season. I said to Sam, I think her family could all die, if I'm honest, but putting her child through an arranged marriage, even though she didn't arrange it herself, she did the introductory side, which is basically, hey, it's not official, but, see there's something going with you and this guy at the pale age of 14. And all of this to get out of debt, to stop the Imperials looking at her financial records due to her funding the rebellion, her taking away her daughter's freedom, which is the one thing she wanted herself, which she couldn't get herself because she was put into an arranged marriage. The person that she fancied and loved, Tay Carver, who helped finance those things, without jumping too far at the end, has a sticky ending. I don't know where to begin with this arc because I don't want to sit here ranking them. This is the best, that's the best. This is a character in a prison who is going through some of the most personal ordeal. The others are going through missions. She is going through her life whilst dealing with the rebellion. She is trying to see her daughter through an arranged wedding whilst in the background she's funding this rebellion. Her financer, her banker, has lost all his money because he's funding her rebellion, and her rebellion have basically fucked up his investments. Sounds a lot like Elon Musk. Same fate, please. And you can get one step further and then say, Luthen Rail. Not like she's afraid of him, but he rocks up and she's afraid. I think she's going through the motions as an understatement in these 3 episodes. And I'm jumping to the ending in saying she let it rip on the dance floor. She was unbelievable at dancing. We've lost Phill once more. He can hear the Niamos remix. He's dancing as well. But this is one of those. Aaron, I don't even know what I'm doing talking about this. I just want your thoughts on this middle arc before we get into the nitty-gritty of it, because I loved it. I loved it.
I think one of my... Because for me, during season 1, all of Mon Mothma's stuff and all the Luthen stuff, I did find it really well written, but for me, it was just kind of like... I don't want to sound like I'm ripping into it because I'm not, but it kind of, for me, felt like, okay, this is interesting, but it's kind of just there to get to the next thing. Again, it's still really well written in that. But with these first 3 episodes, they've really done a good job of setting up that tension within the dynamics between the 3 of those characters specifically, and start, already Mon Mothma's, thing for rebellion is there, but it wasn't, she was still trying to keep it under covert in the first season. But in the second season, in this first 3 episodes, you can already start to tell that if the more she's pushed, the more that's going to lead to her fully committing to it, that we'll get later on in the season. And there's already starting to be a few bits of that. For example, the 2 things that come to mind, is the first one is her talking to her daughter before the ceremony goes ahead, saying, you can choose to back out of this. And then the other thing is probably her just, like you said, ripping loose on the dance floor. And actually, I think it was that whole scene which kind of made me, on a side tangent, that whole scene made me think this feels like a different composer. And it's going off what you said earlier, that kind of confirmed it. So I didn't realize Nicholas Britell hadn't returned. But yeah, it's so far it's quite interesting, and I like the fact that we're starting to see the pieces set into place in specific ways that will lead to different things. How they'll play out, I don't know, but I like the fact that we're starting to see Mon Mothma not being pushed to her limits, but you can tell that we're at that point where if she keeps getting pushed, we know something's gonna tip, and then we're gonna get to the stuff that we know. But I do think it is quite interesting how it played out in these first 3 episodes. It wasn't quite how I was expecting it to go, but I thought it was quite riveting how it played out. Again, the writing in that section alone is spot on in terms of the character dynamics and how it all just plays out generally.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And certainly if you think about, we do have a Phill back via audio. We've got Phill back on audio. The Mon Mothma side of things, where it goes with her is if you look at not Revenge of the Jedi, no, that never got released. Return of the Jedi. Caroline Gleason's Mon Mothma. She's very cold, and there's almost this isn't a criticism. There's not nothing to her, but again, it's one of those. It was a very minor role within Star Wars. Oh God, Phill. I think we've got Phill. Can you hear us?
Yeah, perfectly well.
We've got him. Lovely. Sorry, it sounded like Godzilla attacked you then. And basically, there's still a journey for Mothma to go on, and I think the first season of Andor, bringing in a cousin, bringing in a husband, bringing in a daughter, it creates tension. And I won't do the whole in Rebels. We don't see any of that. We don't know what's going to happen to her family, but personally, to be the leader of a rebellion, a politician leader of the rebellion, we have an unbelievable line from Luthen in this, where he basically turns. I was like, "We've got to protect you," and she's sort of like, "Why would anyone want to protect me?" And it hasn't dawned on her at that point that she is the leader of the rebellion. And I love that. It's something I never thought about, but Luther knows she needs protecting. She needs to be looked out for. We have to keep her alive. Now, I believe in canon, it was confirmed at some point that they said that she left as soon as the Battle of Scarif happened for her own safety, that should they have lost the rebel base and rebellion, she'd be there to rebuild. I like they're playing at this angle elsewhere of Mon Mothma. In these 3 episodes particularly, and I'll go into the relationship with the daughter. The story, her telling her daughter that how her mother got drunk and she wishes her mother had basically told her, "You don't have this, you don't have to marry this person." And the daughter's response is, basically, "I wish you were drunk like your mother," which then sends her, combined with the fact that the person she clearly loved growing up finds out he's going to get bumped off by my business partner. He's going to get killed this moment. Sends it over. There's just something about, and I know we'll talk about the adjacent sequence that went on with Bix a little bit later, but the way they shot that, the choreography, just letting her loose, no dialogue, no need to have an action, no need to have someone like bump into her, nothing like that. Just her in the moment with that music. I thought it was one of the best sequences in the whole 2 seasons so far.
Yeah.
Phill,
there was build up to it as well.
Yeah, and it was that great trailer shot. I put it as a thumbnail of it's her like reluctant look, knowing that fuck it, why not? Like this is what's gonna have to be. Phil, your thoughts on the Mothma stuff?
I mean, the Mon Mothma stuff is what intrigued me the most coming into this. As I said earlier, Genevieve O'Reilly has made this character her own. As you well put, George, a brief appearance of a character and a well-placed character in Return of the Jedi has developed into something that's been critical, and it's not even just in this. Obviously, you got the books and comics as well, like the new Reign of the Empire series, all based around this kind of political aspect. And politicians in Star Wars have always been important. To see the home life, to see Chandrila, to see what and where we are going with her as a character is fascinating. Obviously, we had a little bit of it last year, not a huge amount, but not last season, sorry. As you said, to see the whole wedding sequence, we knew it was coming. We knew that she had to make a deal. She knew that she had to move her funds around and take on that, obviously helped facilitate that. There was a price to be paid. We're now seeing that price being paid. And her daughter is almost the willing counterpart in all this of the whole, well, yes, I actually not only do I want to go along with this, I feel I should go along with this. And you do see the bit of the humanization. You do see the whole, they've had their first fight, and you see Mon being like the mother, the actual mother character, rather than just be aloof to her daughter and to her husband, which you see more in season 1, that whole, when she blames the casino trips on Perrin for the money disappearing, and that whole reason we now get to it is Tony Gilroy again going, I have placed seeds, now watch them grow. And it's beautiful to see it's come to a pass. The entire wedding as a whole as well, to see the Chandrila life, to see Mon just kind of degrade more and more she goes along, and her sanity just leave her. She realizes, especially with Luthen rocking up as well, she kind of twigs that not everything is how it's supposed to be. It's like, what are you doing here? What's this? What's this? And by the end of it, she just loses herself to the music, and you see her sanity slip away, and it also is it's part of a juxtaposition that we'll talk about later, much later when it comes to obviously Bix and that scene. We will talk about that, but I'm bringing it up now just as the counterpoint of you see both sides of the rebellion, see both sides of the human aspects, and I said it with humanizing the dehumanization when it came to the Empire. This is another thing of seeing a similar effect, but for the Rebel Alliance to see the sacrifice. So I have got nothing but the utmost respect for Tony Gilroy taking the idea of a political marriage, placing it in Star Wars, and giving it a reason to be there, not just a add-on. It was a proper story point, and now we see why. And it was fantastic.
Agreed with you. I just want to bring a comment by Carl from earlier, which actually coincides with this too. But bad people always believe they're making hard decisions for the good of people. They built a Death Star that blows up planets in the name of peace. The juxtaposition of this, where you can look at Mon Mothma with the Spock quote, where it's like the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. It's like Mon Mothma has essentially had to sacrifice her daughter's freedom, although willingly, which makes it more painful for her. That her daughter wants the marriage, her daughter wants to follow through with it, that she isn't turning away, because she is the person that put that daughter into contact with the groom. And having the contrast with Tay, him turning up, his wife has left him, his money's disappeared. Mon Mothma's husband is jealous because he knew that she always wanted to be with the other person, that they had their own arranged marriage. There is so much going on here, and it goes back, and we'll talk real world things again later on, but I have said to so many people across the last 2.5 years, you could put Andor on, and you could pretend it is not in Star Wars. You would not know it's not in Star Wars. You could take those scripts, you could give it to anything ever made, call it, change the names of the characters, the planets, the costumes. That would fit in any given decade, in any country, for any storytelling, because the quality of the writing of the story and the ideas transcend what is the bigger picture, which is the intellectual property. And I think, again, who would have thought 5 years ago, we want the Mon Mothma series. It is almost her series as much as Andor's, and we said that so much in season 1. But let's talk about Mr. Main Event, shall we? Cassian Andor. Has anyone got anything more they want to say, on the Mon Mothma stuff before we move on to the last bit?
The only thing I was going to say was just to kind of add on what Phil said and what you've just said, is the fact that the way everything, I feel this more with Andor than anything else, because sometimes when Star Wars or just any show or any film in general tries to set something important up that is going to be important later, it can feel very obvious and very blunt. But Tony Gilroy in season 1, and especially with season 2, is setting stuff up so naturally that you genuinely don't even know that you're setting a thing up until it gets to it. Like that that line you mentioned, George, from season 1 about like the trade things going in and out of Gorman, and you didn't realize until getting to season 2, it's like, oh right, okay, we're going much further with that one throwaway line we initially thought. And that was kind of the only thing I was going to add, just kind of praising Tony Gilroy's writing even more, is the fact that he does it in a way, especially someone who's an aspiring writer, he does it that's so annoyingly effortless. It kind of is annoying in a good way. But yeah, I just wanted to praise that a bit more. He does it in a way that feels natural and effortless, and again, kind of the same with the character implications and the way they're implemented in the story. They feel like they're there for a reason, and it's not just, oh, there's Krennic again, oh, there's this character again. Everything feels purposeful, but it's kind of been subtly built up, rather than that, remember this thing, it's going to be important later, not in like a, oh, wink and nod sort of way, which I really do appreciate, and it's really refreshing for once.
No, that's very fair. Phil, anything more on Mon Mothma?
Nothing more really to add. Mon, as I said, as a character, I've been interested to see where she would go from that one brief appearance to now fully fleshed out to every appearance in books and comics, and then here in Andor, and of course in Rebels as well, has been one very carefully selective plight. Of course, you even see her in Ahsoka as well. You see more of the end point of the character, Chancellor Mon Mothma. You see where the character goes, but this lays that groundwork. There's not a huge amount to add apart from, again, just praising Genevieve O'Reilly for her acting in this, as to play a character to a point of, again, use the word effortless there, Aaron. Use it for Genevieve O'Reilly as well, to make it from a pure, I have to play the perfect mother in front of the guests and the perfect host, to I have to then try and make sure that this arbitrary numbers get thrown at me, to make sure that all I'm getting thrown under the bus here with Tay, then also with her own husband, where he gets jealous as well, to see all the aspects in one episode. Well, 3 episode arc. Fantastic.
Definitely. Lovely stuff. Okay, let's talk about the title character, Cassian Andor. So, this time round, he is... Well, let's just really get into it, shall we? Phil, you'll get a bit of background for us. Let's kickstart in a test facility. So this is the 15 minutes they played us at the the Andor event a couple of weeks ago. I know at Star Wars Celebration, they played the first episodes to everybody in attendance. So obviously a key part of the marketing campaign has been Cassian in the TIE. It's a TIE Avenger, right, Phil? I think that's what I've read it's called, the TIE Avenger.
No, it's more the TIE Aggressors, what we thought it was going to be based on. This might actually be almost a entirely new ship, as it were. Okay.
That's interesting, because he's a test pilot, and we get this great lovely little new character. Again, let's talk Tony Gilroy. Let's rave about him some more. First scene of the new season, let's just bring in another incredible monologue about what it is to feel to be a rebel, to be scared, to enjoy what you've done. And this is great stuff. And this kind of epitomizes Andor, right? Let's take some unbelievable writing, and then we add in a great action sequence to go with it. That first 15 minutes epitomizes what the show has been for 12 episodes already, for what it will continue to be. And it's a great entry point. Bring us back a year later. Andor's on a mission. He's going to get out with this new thing, and he's going to fly it somewhere we don't know until the end of episode 2. Now, it's a great action scene, and it's a great intro to the return of the character. What I didn't realize is actually going to be the first part of, I guess, his story arc for these first 3 episodes, where I'm just going to jump through, and guys, rewind back if you want to go a little bit back further to that interesting stuff. But we have him stranded on a planet between a rebel cell having a somewhat rebel civil cell war, but whether we want to call it that. A group of idiots, if I'm honest, which is kind of hilarious, where there's a lot of comedic moments in these first 2 episodes of just how inefficient and ridiculous they are. Now, I don't mind this, because to me, the core of the story of these first 3 episodes is that Mon Mothma stuff, and it is what is going on with Bix and everybody back on Nina Rao. The key here is that this ends up being Yavin 4, which is, I've got to say, again, Tony Gilroy, he's not one for like the cameos for the sake of cameos, those like fan service moments. I'm not going to sit here making digs at Favreau Filoni and all that stuff. There is a place in Star Wars for fan service, but to end that second episode on the fact that he was actually stranded in Yavin 4 for 2 hours and no one at home knew until he jetted off and flew off, I loved that, because Yavin 4, A, is in all the marketing, and B, is an essential location that the Rebels need to be at where this season ends. So the fact that Cassian is tied there and he is there before the Rebel cell is, I absolutely love it. I don't have much to say on the actual him being stranded there until he gets off, but if you guys want to bring up any of the Andor stuff, then please, the floor is yours.
I don't really have much to add. Really, I'm not very good for this thing. But I think the only thing I will say is that I feel like this might be me reaching, but I feel like there could, again, knowing what Tony Gilroy's like with his writing, there could be a possibility of him going, oh, the Rebels need a place to set up, and then he goes, oh, I know. I feel like that's a bit too on the nose of him just going, oh, I know this place. I was stranded there for 2 hours. I feel like that would be a bit too winking.
I think it'll be
nudge,
Luthen.
nudge sort of thing.
If I'm honest, I think
Yeah.
Luthen sent him there, or Saul Guerrero. Like someone has sent him there on the mission, and I feel that they're scouting out planets. That's just me being, I don't want to say what planets we've seen in trailers, but there might be a planet from episode 7 that pops up as well.
That, to be honest, what you've just said feels more, again, of a natural way of linking it in rather than just someone asking Andor, we need to put the rebels somewhere. Where do you think? And he just goes, well, there was this place I was stuck in for 2 hours that might be worth it. I think that would be like, if it was handled by any other writer, I feel like that would be the way it would go.
That is exactly how it... If it wasn't animated Star Wars, which I know is for kids, but adults enjoy it too, and it gets very dark. That would bang on be something like Ezra says in Star Wars Rebels, and I would accept that because it's Star Wars Rebels. But on a show like Andor, I'm kind of with you. It could have fell into that trap. Phil, your Yavin reaction?
I didn't know it was Yavin.
Did you not? You must have been very tired, my friend.
I was extremely tired at that point. It was like 4 a.m. Which bit was Yavin?
So when he gets in the ship to fly off right at the end, when he's in the jungle.
Yes.
The jungle planet is Yavin. As he takes off, the camera pans, and you've got the temples, and you've got the planet Yavin, right?
I thought it was still
on the moon.
I thought it was still on Sinor at that point.
No. He's gone. He was stranded in space. So yeah, he's been in Yavin the whole time. So he went back to Yavin. So that essentially what we know is on his mission, he was there 3 days before. And he would be meeting this other person, not the lady from the start, because I did check. I was like, is she died? Like, have they killed her off screen? It's not. She's just a character that didn't come back. He was meant to drop the ship, meet his contact, and then go. But in those 2 days on his mission, that rebel cell emerged who had the infighting and killed his friends and basically waited there with no food.
Fair enough. That wasn't okay. Yes, it was early in the morning. It wasn't particularly clear that he'd actually left Sinai because he was trying to get away from it.
I'm with you because it just cuts to him in a forest as well.
Yeah,
I'm very
that's
much
why I didn't realize it was Yavin because my brain was looking at it going, well, he hasn't left Sinai yet, so I must have missed the last bit. However, that being said, you take my little bit out there of it not being Yavin. Sinai, this is the first canonical appearance of Sinai, which is just really cool. The whole Sinai test fleet and where the TIE fighters come from in the end. That whole sequence of the conversation he has with his contact in the at Sinai Fleet Systems with that speech. Again, we had a lot of good speeches in last season, especially, I can't swim, but keep climbing and all the rest of it. And then obviously Luthen's speech, fighting for a sunrise I'll never see. This had another one of those character development speeches from Cassian, going from I'm in it for myself to no, the rebellion is a grander thing. You're being extremely brave. But yeah, to get stranded with those idiots, to give it almost the comical humor, yet still feel serious. Again, all credit to Tony Gilroy and the writing for that, but also it's the weakest part of them for me. I felt it was quite dumb, and I must admit I didn't enjoy it compared to everything else I was seeing. But it's more because, from an outside perspective, you're looking at it just being frustrated. You go, look, why can't the pair of you just link up, work together, do what you need to do? Cassian obviously just picks his moment and legs it. But yeah, I didn't enjoy it as much as I did the rest of the episodes. Although I do now kind of want a TIE fighter with a Gatling gun because that thing is just cool. But no, to see the fact though that he clocks him. So the bit I did enjoy was when he finally clocks not where he is, but who he's with. Hang on a second, we've been supplying you. We have been giving you everything that you're fighting with. This isn't a random occurrence. That's like, hey, I'm here for a reason. They don't listen to him, but to see him have that moment is fantastic. So yeah, for me, not the strongest part of these 3 episodes, but at the same time, a necessary development, a necessary point, because it then the knock-on effect. It isn't Cassian being trapped that's the important part. It's then the reactions of those around him. It's the reactions from Luthen and from his assistant. It's the reactions from Bix and Bo and all the rest of it. It's everybody else's reaction to him not being there. It shows why he's so important, but also shows why They're trying to get through this mess. So yeah, no, and I do agree though with what you brought up with it all being the whole. Yeah, okay, if this was Rebels, Ezra would have just said, yeah, okay, I found this planet, like he did with Attalon. It would have worked, though, in that Rebel setting. It almost would have worked in this, but it's too smart for that. It's too highbrow. It's too that next step of, no, this is a serious drama effect of there's reasons and rhymes behind everything that happens and everything you see. So, yes, we will get there, but to see it is very important. So I didn't know it, but now I do know it, and then adds another layer onto those scenes.
Absolutely. And it's, as you kind of, I'm with you. I didn't enjoy the whole we're stranded here, they're stranded here. It worked, and I appreciate the logic of it. And it was very much, you said, Phil, the key at these parts is Cassian's here and there, but where it's his impact on the others. We've got Luthen at the wedding, like, where's Cassian? Considering, a year ago he was desperate to be dead. Now he's starting to worry about his guy, who's clearly one of his trusted ones. You've got the rest of the team, which I guess we can really go into now. Mina Rao, we've got Bix, Brasso, Willman, and B2. A heavy part of the marketing campaign has been the opening arc. We kind of knew that was the same thing with Ferrex for season 1. Going off the back again, that whilst this is a series that's looking at the Galactic not Republic, but the Empire, that, hey, we're dealing with like Director Krennic and building a Death Star, we're dealing with Mon Mothma and building a rebellion. It's called Andor. He's got characters that are attached to him in season 1, people that have been through horrible ordeals with him in that first season. And to have a secondary subplot in his own story where he needs to get back, there's something very real, again, if we get into real politics, and it's going to be the Asukas in particular. Essentially, these refugees are in the roles of undocumented migrants during a fascist regime, which, I kid you not, couldn't be more on the ball than what's going on now. A planet too poor to hire people correctly, that are limited in the amount of refugees they can take in, but the work that it needs them to have for a harvest season means that they hire migrants, which is known and accepted by the Empire. That is a pretty real dynamic, and I've used the word real too much tonight, and I think, again, this is what the Andor series and what Tony Gurra's writing is drawn from. He has not took this job and written these things to write them for the sake of Star Wars. He is a storyteller that wants to tell these stories that are taking place in these regimes in a different galaxy, far, far away, and a long time ago. And this one in particular, the Corrupt Admiral, let's just not beat around the bush. We're 3 guys that are now going to talk about sexual assault in Star Wars on a live stream. It's a very difficult subject matter that neither of us are qualified to discuss in regard to experience. Obviously, we're going to talk about it. That's not dismissing it. We have seen, once again, in the last 24 hours, the biggest idiot on YouTube, Mr. Star Wars Theory, getting everything possible wrong he could. This time round, saying sexual assault is bad in Star Wars because Darth Vader doesn't approve. That's right. That's a grown man, and that's his opinion. Darth Vader's not real. Obviously, SA is. And it's a pretty difficult subject matter to talk about, something we obviously haven't seen in Star Wars before, but a theme which has been in Star Wars before, yet never executed in as abhorrent a way. For example, this is going to get very nerdy now. The race of Twi'leks are just essentially sex slaves. Obviously, there's very highbrow and hypes within that, but you can look at the legends and the expanded universes and very much what that species goes through across the galaxy. Essentially just sex slaves everywhere. You can look at Princess Leia in episode 6. What Andor has done is move into the real life Earth 2025, the history of humankind, into fascist regimes, dictatorships, and how people in positions of power will act in said positions of power when they want something, and when they can't have the something they want, the route they go to obtain it. And if they still can't get that, then route to different manners. It's very weird to talk about this on a stream. It's going to be a tough watch for a lot of people, and I know people that have flagged it was a tough watch. I stayed off Twitter until I saw them, so I didn't actually see anything until last night in regards to conversation around this. I know that Adriana has spoken about it. I know that Tony Gilroy has now spoken about it. And what I am going to say, which doesn't add to the conversation as such, is that there absolutely is a place to put this in Star Wars in very, very limited ways. And this series has executed it in one of the few, I don't use the word positive, this series has put it on screen in a transferable way to real life that I think only a show such as Andor can have the delicacy of doing properly. And I think there's got to be credit to Lucasfilm for allowing this, whether that be Disney too. A very tough sequence to watch, very powerful, and the fact they say the word rape in the series as well. I mean, I go back to season 1 when they swore for the first time. Like, well, we've not heard that said in Star Wars. This is a different meaning of that. But without it sounds like how we've just hyped up an Empire and Rebellion for like an hour and a bit. What are both of your thoughts on the sequence? Because I know it's more difficult to talk about than what we have already, but we've got to talk about it in a contextual discussion.
I pretty much gonna kind of jump off of what you've pretty much just said, is that I feel like out of all the projects we've had Star Wars related in the last couple of years, Andor is really the only one that can not necessarily get away with doing this, but it's the only one where it would feel justified in terms of like Andor is the show that is going for that grittier, grounded, more realistic thing.
Yeah.
Therefore, it kind of has that authority is not the best word, but it's kind of got that thing around it where it's allowed to go just a little bit further than something like Mandalorian or Ahsoka or even the Obi-Wan series, and it's allowed to tackle a few of these things that are a bit more serious, a bit more close to home, because it's already established that within the first season, and with the second season it can go a bit further with those things. For example, the assault, the whole thing of them essentially being undocumented migrants. We know there's going to be a giant massacre at some point later in this season. It's set up this thing perfectly, this tone that's kind of singular just to Andor, and I guess Rogue One a little bit, but more specifically Andor. And I think this was the thing, because when the officer started trying to flirt with Bix, very early on I was like, okay, I wonder how far they're going to push this, and I wonder how far they're going to go with it. Because as soon as it started happening, it was incredibly uncomfortable, and it's one of the most uncomfortable things I've seen in quite a while, not just Star Wars, but as a whole. And then in the third episode, when they fully kind of commit to that, it was very hard to watch, but I think there was a way that they did it that was very well done. Again, kind of mirroring a little bit the Mon Mothma thing, where the camera work kind of helped capture that sort of thing of her getting drunk and just kind of going, you know what, I kind of give up. I'm just going to commit to the scenario and just have, get drunk. The camera work kind of, again, I'm butchering my words there, but that kind of captured that scene really well. And again, I feel like don't want to go into like filmmaker stuff here, but like it kind of went a bit handheld. It went a bit, it reflected the thing they were trying to do. And I feel like if they'd kept it the way they'd shot the rest of this series, I feel like it would have been a bit out of place. But because they're very good, not just Tony Gilroy the writing, but the directors involved as well. I can't remember the name of the director for these episodes, but they do a very good.
Milo didn't do this either. The Last of Us on Sunday just gone. That's what I got mixed up with.
Yeah, I think I'm just looking for the name of the director. Ariel Kleiman, I think she directed all three of the first 3 episodes. And it's just a really good way of kind of giving things a reason and then making those things as impactful as possible, not just through the performances, not just through the writing, but in the way they're captured as well. And again, you can't really get away with something like that in Ahsoka or Mandalorian. Andor has set up this stage for those things to kind of not necessarily happen, but like it's got more, it's got more levity in terms of, right, if it wants to go in that direction, it can to a certain extent, and it can to a certain extent in that direction. And I feel like it kind of, they should have to show these things. Not obviously, it's not, not necessarily in like yeah, I'm butchering my words here, but like I feel like they did it in the best possible way they could have and made it incredibly uncomfortable in every possible way. I'm going to stop talking before I kind of mince my words even more, but that's kind of the gist I'm trying to get across. I feel if they were going to do it, which they did it in the best possible way they could have done for the sake of the story and these characters, especially in the situation they're currently in.
And they didn't undersell that in a non-gross way. Like, it wasn't like they blissfully moved on. That stayed that character. And the character who's already haunted by the events of a year ago, this will no doubt continue to be a part of that. Phill, over to you if you're still with us audio-wise.
I am indeed.
Not your thoughts on that scene. I mean, obviously give thoughts on the scene if you like, but that story, I guess we could say that obviously something we haven't seen in Star Wars before.
So I'm not going to retread a lot of what's been said because you guys have put it in good terms and also kind of explained it. The word that crops to mind, and I'm going to explain this, my entire thought process here, is the Empire, whether it be the Empire as we know it, the First Order, the Separatist Alliance, or the Republic, depending on your point of view, the bad guys in Star Wars have always been made out to be kind of cartoony, but in a way that there's supposed to be an element of realism to it. You see a little bit more of that with the First Order, especially with Hux on Starkiller Base. You see a lot more of the villainous side of it, especially when it comes to then Kajimi as well. Talk about that. Talk about the sides of the darker side of Star Wars. Now you talk about the Empire. The Empire has been made out to be a monster. How do you show the monster? How do you make people feel the reality of the situation? You give them a scenario that is realistic. A highfalutin science fiction giant floating weapon is devastating and it's terrifying, but it's not relatable. This is relatable. This is relatable scariness. You talk about the Gorman massacre earlier as well. There are similar things in our own human history, unfortunately. This is something that's prevalent, unfortunately, in the world, not only today, but of the past, and will probably be in the future, because humans are inherently not evil, but there are people out there who are not as well adjusted to the world as everybody else. The way you see about this captain bit to begin with, he initially approaches her in the way of more the, hey, you do me a favor, I'll do you a favor, I maybe look the other way. Then she mentions she has a husband. I know she's obviously kind of referencing Cassian here. But you see his inflection change from oh, okay, maybe you won't do me a favor, but I'll take it from you. And that way, I still get what I want, and you still get what you want. Now, we then get to the scene itself, and the word acceptable comes to mind. And only from the way of, you've both talked about the only place this could happen would be in Andor, and I agree the same way. It's acceptable in Andor because the precedence was set in Series 1 and in Series 2 so far before we get to that scene of, we are showing things that are for a more mature audience. So from a storytelling point of view, it is acceptable to use that in that kind of context. I understand. Please do not take my words out of context when it comes to this. I'm trying to really read into the script writing behind it and Tony Gilroy's mindset. Tony Gilroy does not come across as someone who would put that on screen unless it was intended to be there for a reason of shock, but in a good way. And the way that this is done, you talked about how it was shot. That's one thing. The other thing was there was no lack of clothing. There was no removal of clothing. It was more the violence that preludes the act. It's all about what's to come. The terrifying look on Bix's face as she realizes how much trouble she's in. The fact that she then fights for her life. That's what we're supposed to see more. We're not supposed to think about what necessarily is happening in terms of the rape itself, but more of the act that's coming, the violence that surrounds it, and the true terrifying nature that is the Empire. The way the camera is moving, and I mentioned this earlier when we were talking about Mon Mothma. I talked about the juxtaposition between that and the scene we'll see later, we will talk about later, which is this. The beautiful juxtaposition between, as you say, Aaron, about someone who is getting drunk and going with the flow of life of, I can't stop this from happening. I even tried to warn my daughter, but I did it in a way that failed, and I did it and I hurt her without meaning to the opposition of, this is a very real scenario, and playing on so many different heartstrings to show that, yes, this is Star Wars, but this is Star Wars for a mature audience. You have everything from the Young Jedi Adventures, which is aimed at 5 and 6 year olds when it comes to High Republic, all the way to Andor, which is aimed at a mature audience and yet still feels Star Wars. I talked earlier about the humanization of the dehumanization of the Empire. This then plays into that. So it's all a lot of different points that add up to a scene that was, especially at 4 a.m, incredibly difficult to watch. However, it didn't leave me feeling like, well, that wasn't in there for any old reason. They did that just because they wanted to. No, it made a very good point, and it showed it in a way that was done respectfully. I mean, the name of the actress escapes my brain here for a second, but who plays Bix. They left her clothed, they left her untouched in that regard, and they just showed the violence of the preludes to come. And it was wonderfully shot, but absolutely horrific at the same time.
Yeah, I'm with you, and you both put eloquent. It's a really difficult discussion to have, and we don't have these discussions on streams, let alone on a Star Wars one. And I'd like to think people take from this episode those real life atrocities that Tony Gilroy has spoke about. That since Tony Gilroy spoke, basically saying, "You, as you said, Phil, it's not just a thing of the past, but the human race is rerouted in that, and it has done for centuries and thousands of years, and all of our ancestors are almost through that." And it's powerful how it's been spoken about. And again, I think, regardless of it being Star Wars, you have to have the correct creative team that decide to do stuff such as that. I haven't seen Adolescence on Netflix yet. I know a lot about it. I know it's directed by Philip Brantini, who obviously did other one take stuff. That's obviously been a big ordeal, and they have made sure they had the right people to equip to deal with the subject matter such as that. And I think there's something quite powerful about this being in Star Wars, that I'm not saying this brings more eyes to something as horrible as that, because everyone's aware of it, but it is a reality that it exists, that not everyone, even though Star Wars at times is escapism and people don't like it when Star Wars doesn't do escapism, it's also a reflection of real life. Star Wars is rooted in real life politics. George Lucas has spoken about that for decades and will continue to do so, and other people will continue to do so. And I think it's paramount that we have other storytellers working on Star Wars who also continue to look at real life events to influence that. And it makes it a really hard segue to move on from past this sequence. But where I'm going to try and move this conversation, because I know we've gone for almost 90 minutes, so thank you both for a start, is talking about the end of this episode, not only the return of Cassian, but through his heroic moment, he gets to kill all the stormtroopers in that great ship. We do lose Bresso, the legend himself, who, speaking of fascists, smashed a stormtrooper's head with a brick with Aunt Petunia's ashes locked in it. I kind of said earlier, right? I think we're going to lose pretty much anyone that we probably didn't know about in Rogue One onwards. Obviously, I think we'll get some survivors. Personally, not just because of today, I'd have said this last season too, I really hope Bix makes it out alive. She is the one person that's gone through the worst of anybody on this show, especially now. At the same time, Tony Gilroy also rewrote the ending of Rogue One and no one got out. So who knows? but I thought it was a poignant ending. Great bit of acting from Diego, who obviously reunites his friend, but his friend's passed. He can't save him, and he has to sort of leave him behind, knowing he's got to get Bix and the others out. B2 seemingly just left wherever that lady was with Brasso thing. So in the predictions video, I don't ever expect people to watch them, but I'm going to say every stream till I'm wrong. I have predicted, and I will maintain this, and I don't care if I get it wrong because I'm not one of those weirdos that demands to be right. I think B2 is going to get reprogrammed into K2. That's been my prediction for season 2. Now, might not happen. K2 might come in next week and it be completely different, but that's something I'm running with. What did you guys think about, past that sequence, the ending of the episode? And obviously, we now know next week we're going to have gone forward a year. So we're not going to see the immediate resolution of this, but we are going to move forward a year to what has been and is done.
Now that you mention the whole thing of like most people are probably going to die between now and the end of the season, I feel like what we said about Mon Mothma and possibly her family dying, or basically just her situation getting progressively worse, I feel like that's going to be mirrored in some way with Andor as well, and his arc. Like they're already in a bad situation. Like they're on the run and they're kind of just jumping from different place to different place. But I feel like there's going to be a mirroring there before things come to a head at some point later in the season. Mon Mothma is going to be pushed to her limits, and I feel like Cassian and his friends are going to be pushed to that limit as well. The first example being Brasso dying and Bix almost getting assaulted. I feel like that's the start, and it's just going to get progressively worse for them to the point where we may see more of them die. And again, Andor's going to be put in a situation where he kind of has no choice left, which will then lead perfectly into the start of Rogue One. I almost forgot the name of the movie for a second. And now that you mentioned it, I do actually, I didn't mentally clock. I think because there was a lot happening in quick succession with the assault and then Brasso dying and then it just ends. I think there was so much happening that I completely forgot that B2 had been left behind. I presume he's still been left behind. I didn't see him on the ship. But now that you mentioned that there's a year gap between each of the 3 episodes, I do think him being reprogrammed into K2SO is very likely. I don't know if they'll do it or how they'll do it, but because there are year gaps between each of the 3 the installments of 3 episodes, I think that is a possibility, and it would just back up what we said earlier, that Tony Gilroy has said you will think about Rogue One differently, not just from like Krennic's perspective, but just from everything as a whole, where that film's considered and regarded. And I feel like Krennic is the first step, and I feel like B2 coming K2SO will be another step in that path of just re-evaluating how we perceive Rogue One as a film and the events that happen in that film. And I'm at this. I know I said this at the start, but I'm just now at a point where like I'm just genuinely intrigued to see where these things go, because I feel like all the pieces have been set up with these first 3 episodes, and I honestly don't know what's going to go where or how we're going to get from what point A to point B. But it's definitely left a lot to think about between each of these 3 episodes.
From a canonical point of view, it won't happen. It's not what happens to K2SO, just as a point. So in the Cassian and K2SO comic, Cassian and a couple of the spies are sent on a mission to recover Imperial protocols. They find a droid who ends up being K2SO, who gets reprogrammed and comes and joins the rebellion. That's it in a small, sweet little nutshell. So if they do decide to go down the route of reprogramming B2 Emo into K2SO, I will not be very happy, because it would prove they don't care about the story group as a whole and the wider canon. So as much as those theories are cool, I hope not, because it will just be BS. That's me really raging from a fanboy where I have spent so long reading and ingesting everything that I can.
Bit of the Boba Fett thing again, though, right? When they took it and they changed it and basically told you that the comics don't overrule the live action.
Boba Fett's slightly different because
Ignore me, it wasn't comic. That was the book, right?
It was Aftermath, the Aftermath trilogy, which, to be fair, Chucky Wang was chucked off of any future Star Wars projects because of his own political outviews and all the rest of it. So those books have kind of been pushed down anyway. But this is one of those ones where I would be a little upset, but at the same time, B2 being left behind is sad because everyone loves B2. He's awesome. He's a wonderful little depressed Marvin the Paranoid Android style robot, right? He's cool. But Brasso, and we've got to talk about not only that, we've got to talk about the farmer who they thought was helping them all along, betraying them.
Yeah.
It is a huge point of they thought they had found a friend who at the end of the day was just sticking out for his own neck. And it's just watching that to see the betrayal in his face was really, we thought we'd found a good guy here. No, you're just like the rest of them. And you could see the look on his face when the call gets brought in about something happening, which obviously was the scene with Bix. You see the two of them like lock eyes, and you see almost a look on his face of just like, well, what would you do in my situation? It's the self-justification again. And yeah, he didn't make it out. And Cassian's face is distraught. He's seeing Bix, who is completely messed up again, and he's worried about what's happened. He's then lost another friend who he had really the only one left from Ferrex who gave a damn about him apart from Bix, the one who lent him money, who kind of covered for him at work through everything. So to get him to where he is now, so to leave him behind was not a small feat. So yeah, to see that happen and to see them go through it, I do agree. We talk about Tony Gilroy's rewrites for Rogue One, how no one made it out. Yeah, no one's making it out of Andor, and I agree. I'd like to see Bix make it out. And what I would like genuinely would be the hug at the end of Rogue One on the beach is Cassian obviously comforting
Bix?
Oh, no, so her name's got my head, Jin. On the beach, comforting her, saying, yeah, unfortunately we're going out. But that look on his face is almost the whole look of, I'm now losing Bix again. But he's now going, he can't get home. So that's what I think part of the whole you will see Rogue One in a different light will be, is him going, I have now lost Bix. And that will be that ending kind of justified for the character.
If there's any survivor, sorry to say into prediction, any survivor from, I guess we could say Andor's crew, because Snarky, Mon Mothma, yes, we know she survived. Again, it doesn't need it, but I won't spoil Sinners, but Sinners has an unbelievable epilogue, which is in the mid-credit sequence. I would just love an epilogue to Andor where if there is a surviving character, we either see them find out about the events from Rogue One or post-rebellion or just something, because I think it's earned to an extent. And again, I don't need a montage, I don't need too much. It's just like if there was a scene, a moment, I'd love to see that. But yeah, it's been an amazing discussion with you both. I want to jump into final thoughts because I'm very conscious of the time. It's almost 10 o'clock here in the UK. These 3 episodes, Andor's returned. We knew we were getting a 3-episode arc. I like doing this with the Star Wars discussions. I like knowing how much the marketing campaign have we seen. Given that this series had an incredible marketing campaign that they gave nothing away in any of the trailers, it was all montage, no story, which is the best trailers they can be. I think we've probably seen like 2/3 of the trailers already, which is fantastic for 3 episodes. And I'm really excited to see what does come next. I'm not going to sit saying, what do I want to see next? We kind of know we're going to move forward a year. There's probably going to be more Gorman stuff. There's going to be more Krennic. There's going to be more Mon Mothma. There's going to be more Luther and Andor, etc. I cannot wait for next week. There will be another 3-episode discussion. I hope everybody at home gets the opportunity to watch it, spoiler-free. Avoid those onlines if you don't want stuff spoiled. But for me, yeah, a solid return for Andor and an arc worthy of the first season to keep. And I'm going to make this claim. If Andor Season 2 lands the way the first 15 episodes of Andor have gone, this will be spoken about at the upper echelons of Star Wars, as it already has. But it may well enter a conversation with the original 6 films at some point, dependent on how this series ends. And in caveat to that, let's see what does to Rogue One. But Aaron, your final thoughts on these episodes?
I think for me, I thought these first 3 episodes were a good start. There were certain elements that kind of held them back from being like, oh my God, this is, peak Andor. I think, like Phil said, that whole section on Yavin, there were points where it was starting to lose me. Like, it was good, but like I feel like the rebels were being a bit too dumb for their own good. But I feel like this could very much mirror how I thought Andor Season 1 played out, which is that there's nothing here that's bad. It's just after a certain point, it's going to kick up a notch and then really hit the ground running. And I had that with Season 1, where the first 2 episodes were really good. They were really well written and well executed. But from like a certain point where like the catalyst just starts, it then kind of has a trajectory. You kind of don't know where it's going every 3 episodes. And you're just more invested. And I feel like that's going to kick in for me with, at least from the end of this 3rd episode moving forward. That's where it was really like, okay, things are starting to happen. Things are starting to fit into place. And I can't wait to see where things will go and how they will start to be pieced into place more going forward. And yeah, even though I do really like these first 3 episodes, I think it was those last few moments of the 3rd episode that have got me excited to see where this will go.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a huge amount I can add to that, because these first 3 episodes, I think actually the best thing I can say is not these first 3 episodes. This first movie out of the 4 we're going to get was phenomenal from start to finish. And yes, there were bits, like I said, with the rebels being a bit silly, but the context of that versus the seriousness we get later on, if you watch that as a movie, if you watch it as I did those 3 in a row, like most people who have done it, sat down there, watched it from start to finish, it makes sense in context of what you get later. And it is, I don't really have a lot to say because I've said a lot already so far, but Tony Gilroy, I cannot applaud him enough for the writing on this. We get so many different flavors of Star Wars and so many different styles of TV shows and movies that all blend into the one umbrella. George, you and I spoke about this when we did our season 1 review, and we were looking through all that. We spoke more about obviously the origins for Gareth Edwards and Tony Gilroy. It came to that. We talked about this being more of that BBC One late night drama. This has taken that format and ramped it up slightly, but also injected a little bit more of the Star Wars flavor to go along with it. I think as the series goes on, we're going to see more of it. We're going to see more of the political side of things. We're going to see more of the rebellion growing, more of the Empire cracking down, the Gorman atrocity. There's so much that's been set up. And yeah, if you take this as a standalone Star Wars story, it still stands up. So yeah, not much to add apart from I cannot wait for next week.
Definitely. And that is going to do our discussion today. Gentlemen, it's been an amazing discussion. Getting both of you on both of, I even say different Andor backgrounds. Aaron, it's been a pleasure to have you on for these, to get you on a Star Wars video finally. I'm glad you watched season 1. I'm glad you liked it and you came on for season 2. Phil, of course, Star Wars, I'm not going to give you your colours. We've got you all the time to keep praising you, even if I can't see you. I know you'll be smiling. But everybody watching home, thank you all so much for sticking with us. Please do, as we say, comment. If you're not watching it live, thank you to have commented whilst we are live. We will obviously have this episode up on the channel. We'll be back across the next couple of weeks. The videos at the end of Andor, there will be a Rogue One discussion after Andor. And if you aren't done with Star Wars for now, if you are sat there thinking, what could they possibly do between this week and next week? Well, guys, you may have seen there is a famous Star Wars film back in the cinemas this weekend. Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith is in 3 hours, is back out in cinemas. Unfortunately, it is for 1 week only, and it is not playing in IMAX. But as I said, Sinners has IMAX. Go and watch both. We're going to be doing a video this Sunday, me and Phil. It's going to be on the episode 3, us revisiting it 20 years later. We have both got 4DX screenings booked. We'll be talking about our experience with that, experience with the film 20 years later. What a beautiful poster that is by Matt Ferguson. And that's going to be between our Andor videos. So do join us for that one, if you're a fan of Star Wars, of course. But thank you both for jumping on. And for everyone else watching at home, we'll see you on the next one. Take care.